What's going on? I'm Caleb from CT Solutions, and today I'm going to give you the 5 essential questions that you must ask your audiovisual vendor before you sign the contract. So let's get into it. Question number 1: what's included in my audiovisual package? Now, I'm here to tell you firsthand, not all packages are created the same, and not all packages cover everything that you may need, which is why it's important that you talk with your vendor to understand exactly what you'll be getting within your package. I've seen event planners book at a venue and then they book with the in-house AV vendor, and they're assuming that because they're booking with the venue, that the vendor knows exactly what they need for their event and that everything will run smoothly. And then when they get on site the day of, they realize that they're missing microphones. They realize that they don't have a large enough sound system for the amount of attendees that they're going to have. They realize that there's not going to be anybody on site to troubleshoot any issues that are going on during the event. So you always want to make sure that you're in contact with your vendor prior to the day that you arrive, definitely as far in advance as you can get into it, to let them know what your expectations are for your event, your goals, the things that you will need, asking them what they think that you will need based on your goals for your events, and having them detail out the specific equipment that you'll be getting within your audiovisual package, if that includes any services or any on-site support within that package. Question number 2: do you have a backup plan for last minute equipment failures? Now you can see the running theme here is that we are preparing for when things will go wrong, not hoping and praying if things do go wrong. So you want to make sure that you're working with a vendor that already has plans and procedures in place in case anything were to happen. Now, obviously, we don't want those things to happen, but we have to be prepared so that way we can be on top of it, we can correct those issues, and we can do it in a way that does not detract from the event and keeps it running smooth sailing. A part of this is making sure that they have backup equipment for those failures. The most common thing may be a microphone, right? If someone is having a microphone and let's say there are radio frequencies that are interfering with the wireless microphone, you may be near an airport and there are a lot of radio frequencies that are going on. So that microphone is cutting in and out. Boom, they need to be able to give you an extra microphone to keep the show going without any real disruptions. Or let's say that the microphone, just the batteries died, something super simple. These are things that we want to make sure your vendor has plans and procedures in place for if those failures happen. And you also want to make sure that you're working with a vendor that's not going to charge you for backup equipment, because they, as the vendor, should be protecting themselves by bringing that equipment in case something like that were to happen. And side note, before we move on to question 3, these are only 5 of the 10 questions that you really should be asking your audiovisual vendor to cover all of the bases and ensure that you're working with the right vendor that's going to make sure your event is set up in a way that's seamless, smooth, delivers the impact that you want for your event, and also has no bumps on the road. If you want to get those full 10 questions, there's a link in the description below to a free checklist of all 10 questions and giving you the reasons why you need to ask those questions, so that way you can be fully prepared when you're having these conversations with your audiovisual vendor. All right, let's move on to question number 3. Question number 3: can you provide case studies or references of past work that you've done that is similar to the event that I'm having? And you want to make sure that you're asking this question because obviously past performance is an indicator of the type of company that you're going to be working with, but you also want to make sure that you're working with a company that understands your goals and understands the outcomes that you want to have for your event and how they can deliver that through their audiovisual solution. A lot of companies will have a certain type of event, and there are a lot of vendors who specialize in certain types of events. So specifically, if you have hybrid or virtual events that you're planning, you want to make sure that you're working with a vendor who has been seasoned and has past performance and experience in those areas, so that way you get the full understanding of what you'll be walking into. All right, now let's move on to question number 4. This is a question that can save you money. So it's very important that you ask this question. What is your policy on last minute changes? Now, a good audiovisual company will be able to work with you on flexible last minute changes, barring that they're not too out of line. But you want to make sure that you're working with a company that is flexible, that really wants to collaborate with you in a way that their goals are your goals for your event. So you want to make sure that you're clear and you understand the expectations of what is tied in with any last minute changes, because as we know in the event space, things change constantly. They change on the fly, and you want to make sure that you're working with a company that is adaptable and that truly wants to collaborate with you for the success of your event. You also want to make sure that you're clear on any charges or any fees that may accompany last minute changes. Some audiovisual vendors may have certain stipulations and fees for certain last minute changes depending on how big or small they are. And the final question, question number 5, what is your timeline for setup and tear down of the audiovisual equipment? This is important to ask because you're going to use this information in accordance with your venue, so that way you have those logistics squared away, especially if your venue has events running behind or after you. You want to make sure that you're working with a vendor that is going to be able to set up in a proper time and also tear down in a proper time. So if the venue needs to turn the room or turn the space in a quick manner, they can do that because you know you're working with a company that will get that squared away in the right timing. And a pro tip for this question is to ask the audiovisual vendor if they can be show ready an hour before the event starts, right? So for example, if they say that it takes them 2 hours to do a setup for your event and your event starts at 4 p.m., you want to make sure that they get there at least at 1 p.m. so that way by 3 p.m. when that comes around, they're show ready and they're ready for the show to go on an hour before the event actually starts. That's a rule of thumb that I go by, and I think that all event planners should make sure that they're working with a vendor that is going to be show ready at least an hour before your event starts. And with that, you have the 5 essential questions that you need to ask your audiovisual vendor before you sign the contract. This will give you the tools, it'll give you the power, and it'll give you the confidence to know that you're working with a vendor that is going to make sure that your event is a success and ultimately that it has the impact that you want it to have on your attendees. Like I said, there are 5 additional questions that you want to ask to cover all bases to make sure that you're not leaving anything out and there aren't any last minute little things that slip through the cracks. That is in a free checklist that you can get in that description down below. I'd love to talk with you guys. I'd love to have a conversation about this. If you guys want to hit those comments below, let's talk about some things that you haven't thought of when it comes to working with an audiovisual vendor. Any questions, any disasters, any horror stories, any success stories. Let's just have a conversation about it and let's grow as a community. This is Caleb from CT Solutions AV, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.